All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to go through some of our favorite tips and tricks from our support team who's all in the room with me. Say hello, everybody.
Good morning.
And this is going to be kind of informal. Some people might interject, go back and forth, but we want to go through kind of real quick about 10 things that we do around here to make our testing more efficient, or stuff that has been launched in the last year that's new that people might not know about. So we're going to be going over using our result diffs so that you can compare results from one run to the next, how to upgrade your existing configs when you update CDRouter to make sure that it'll work with a new version, how to export your results to share them with your customers or your vendors. We're going to look at using the new saved test lists feature, which lets you make a list of tests and turn them into something you can use in a package later. And one of the ways that we've done that with it is with our CDRouter top 100 tests, which is a really good baseline. We'll take a look at some of our new wireless test cases that we recently added and updates to how we do those. And then we're going to look at how to use log filtering to cut down on the soup of a really big log to get what you're looking at, and some sorting and filtering tricks so that you can see the pass-fail criteria of one test all at a glance. Then we'll go over what you can do with the CDRouter web API that we launched in CDRouter 10. And we also, in our most recent release, we put out some new ARP tests, and that was because of some investigative work by our team that revealed some interesting stuff that we'll go over. We'll take a second look at CDRouter DOCSIS and how it can help. And then last but not least, we'll actually take a look at the 2018 roadmap and sort of the stuff that we're looking forward in the future. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to give things over to Brian.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So this first tip is a feature that we added in CDRouter 10.5. It actually came from, it was a feature request from one of our customers, and we thought it was a good idea, so we threw it in. So let's say you do sort of regression testing and you run the same package over and over every night, and you get some mixed results as to what's happening in the, different tests are failing. You can use this great little feature here. So if you want to compare, basically what I'm trying to show you is that you can click on several of your previous results and then hit this little button here, Diff Results, and it will compare them side by side for you. So you can see in this result, dash would mean that it wasn't run, a pass, a check green check, as you know, is a pass, and an X is a fail. So you can go across different results to see how it's done in your regression.
Can you zoom in?
Command
plus. There you go.
That's probably a little bit easier. All right, so that was the first one.
And if you click on any of those, you can jump right to
Oh,
the
right,
results.
yes, good, yep. You can go right, okay, why did this fail? You click on it, it brings you right to the result. So just a sneak of that one. Next one is upgrading your configuration file. So with every release of CDRouter, we have the potential of adding new test files, and very rarely we do deprecate some old ones. But to ensure that your config file is up to date, and I've noticed lately, since I'm in support, I do notice that customers are using sort of out-of-date ones. So if you click here in the About, you can see which version of CDRouter this config file was generated in. So you can compare it to the version you're running now and see that it's a few revs out of date. You can do this, just click the little upgrade button. Let me show you here. And it does preserve any ones that you might have your own. So I created one here, my own test file. It will preserve this when you do the upgrade. So clicking on upgrade. Okay. Now if you click in the About again, you can see that it has been updated to this version, and the test file that I had in my own gets thrown into this section of miscellaneous test files. So
do you need to upgrade your config files every release, or what are the advantages?
Yeah, so like I said, we add new ones. You usually give those a default value, so you wouldn't necessarily have to do this. This just gives you visibility into seeing what we've added. So as you know, every time we add one, we put a default value. So that would be used when you ran your tests.
Okay.
And next. So this is, again, been in CDRouter for a very long time. I bring this up because this is the easiest way. Some of you may have vendors or customers that also have CDRouter, and sometimes you may want to share these results that you're getting with them to make it easier to share information of what tests are passing and failing. And of course, this is the best way to send stuff into the QA support team so that we can help you. This is the export tool, which I'll click onto it here. So here's just a random result. And over here on the left-hand side, there's a little export icon. And clicking that, you can include the packet captures or not. This puts in a format. It's a format that another CDRouter can then import. So if you are the recipient of one of these, you can drag and drop them or click on here and you can download from your local system. And then you can see exactly what the other person who uses the CDRouter can see.
Yeah, and you'll have, when you do this, you'll have the configuration file, the test package, the test logs, capture files, you'll have everything. You can omit the capture files if it's a very, very large test run, and omitting the capture files is just a way to cut down on the size, which might make it easier to email to somebody if you had to. So that's just an option when you're dealing with really large test runs.
And if you do happen to have a very large one and the packet captures are important, just contact the support team here, and we have a file sharing service that we can point you to so that we can still get the large ones as well. All right. And those are the three for me. We'll bring up Matt next.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Matt. So I'll just talk about some of my favorite features in CDRouter. The first one is a feature that we added this past year called saved test lists. Some of you may have already used this feature, but for those that haven't, I'll just quickly run through it. Basically, what a saved test list is, it's a special kind of package. And what this allows you to do is actually define a set of test cases, which you can see I've done here. I have this package named Matt's Favorite Tests. I've got just a couple of test cases in it. And you can see this, well, here, let me edit it first, and that'll be easier to see. You can see at the bottom here that I've added this test list called My Favorite Tests right here within this package. And if you expand this, you can see that this includes a number of different test cases that I've selected. So when you're creating a test package, you have the option of setting this Use as Test List radio button here, or checkbox. When you do that, you can then reference that test list within another package. So the really interesting thing that you can do now is have a set of qualification tests as a saved test list, and then you can reference that in any number of test packages that you build. So that's a very handy way of allowing you to quickly edit a set of tests across multiple packages just by editing that one saved test list. Now, one of the things that we did with this is create what we call the CDRouter Top 100, which is on our support site. And let me open this. Hold on one second. There we go. So on our support site, we have a page called the CDRouter Top 100 Tests, and these are essentially basic tests. This is what we are pointing people at when they're just getting started with CDRouter. These are very quick to run tests, should take less than 20 minutes, and what this is actually a saved test list. So you can download this right onto your system. You'll see that there's a link right here to download that test list, and then you can run that, and that's a great sort of first pass for people that are just getting started with CDRouter or that are testing new devices for the first time. So we recommend that you check that out. It's very quick to run and requires minimal configuration.
you would use the import tool that I just showed you
Exactly.
to bring it into your CDRouter system.
Correct. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about are some of the wireless updates that we did this past year. We actually did a lot of work in the wireless space. One of the things that we did was update the TR69 wireless module to support device 2. And that was something that many of our customers had been asking about, so that's now in there. There's a number of new test cases as well that are device 2 specific. And we had to do that just because the device 2 and IGD1 data models are not quite the same in regards to how they configure wireless interfaces. So there are device 2 specific wireless tests and IGD1 specific wireless tests. We also added a Wi-Fi specific test module, and that includes a couple of different types of tests. There are tests that verify that the beacons that are sent by the DUT actually contain the expected values. There's also a test in there that will verify that all of the modes that the DUT is advertising actually work. So what CDRouter will do is try to connect in all of those different advertised modes and pass traffic. So that's a pretty handy test just to make sure that the DUT is actually able to do what it says it can do. There's also a scaling test in there where we create a number of association and disassociation events, and we just ramp that up. Sometimes we see strange behavior if you do a lot of associations and disassociations with the DUT in a row. And then the last type of test that we've included in that module is different types of associations. So combinations of disassociating and releasing DHCP, and then reassociating and disassociating, not releasing DHCP, reassociating, things of that nature. So there's a couple of different common scenarios in there for different types of association events. So that's been a really interesting test module for us, and recommend that anyone out there doing wireless testing check it out and let us know what you think. And we'll be adding to that as well in the future. So if anyone has ideas for additional test cases, let us know. And then the last little tweak that we made for wireless was the introduction of a new test var called LAN 802.11fi. And this is a test var that you can specify in your CDRouter configuration file that tells CDRouter what mode of operation you want to connect at. And options are A, B, G, N, and AC. So in auto CDRouter will just detect and try to associate with the fastest connection it can. But if you want to test or have CDRouter simulate an 802.11n client, you can do that now with this test var. So that's also pretty handy, and that's a feature request we've had from a few different customers over the years.
So one of the reasons why you might want to upgrade your config is to get this test var. So the default is auto. Right. So if you didn't upgrade your config, you'd be running using the auto.
Right, which is historically how CDRouter has always run until we added this test var. All right, the last thing I'll talk about are some of the new filtering options that we've added. Let me open up a window here. So this, up here in the top right, some of you may be familiar with this already and some of you may not be, but there is a filter box up here now, and what you can do is type in a filter up here, and CDRouter will now only display the log lines that match that filter. So this box up here is what I'm referring to as simple filtering. If you type a filter in up here, the log will auto-update based on what you've typed. So that's pretty cool. It's very handy for identifying specific message types or specific log lines or events. One nice thing about this as well is that it does auto update. So as you start typing, that the log will dynamically update based on what you've entered in there. It's also sticky, which means you can jump across different logs using the nav buttons up here, and this log filter will still be applied. It also works with the existing filtering capabilities that we've had. So if I want to filter out packets, for example, with this filter applied, you can just uncheck that and you'll see the blue line goes away because that was a packet line. So that's a nice feature. It also does work on live updating pages. So if you're watching an actual log that is being generated on the fly for a running test, this filter is applied. So it's a nice way to really reduce the amount of stuff and just zoom in on one specific thing that you're looking for. Now, we also added a more comprehensive filtering capability, and you can get to that using this additional filters button here. And there's a lot of options in here. So instead of just doing a simple text-based filter, you now have the ability to filter on all of these different types of either packets or log messages. So there's a lot of different options in here, and I encourage everyone to check these out and experiment with it. Now, all of the stuff that we've added here on the front end for filtering, you can also do via the web API as well. And there's a lot of power here. So hopefully some of you will find that helpful. All right. Oh, thanks, Brian. Brian mentioned one other thing that I wanted to mention really quick is that this is also a pretty nice little hidden trick. If you're in a log, let me find a log here that has a lot of lines in it really quick.
Sure.
I want the filter applied. Hold on. Of course, I can't find one. Yeah.
Would that probably be a DHCP test?
Yeah. All right. Well, I can show you. It won't be quite as cool here because there's not a lot of log lines. But if you are in a filtered view, you can actually, if you hold down the command key if you're on a Mac or the control key if you're on a Linux or a Windows machine, and then click on the line. So this is line 39. If you hold down this key and click on it, what CDRouter will do is remove the filter and jump you straight to that line. So you can see right here, it jumped us to line 39. So that's pretty neat. If you're way down deep inside of a log file and you find what you're looking for on line 7642, you can hold down the command or the control key, press that line, and it will jump you straight there. One other nice thing as well is that, and this one I don't know if we even have this documented anywhere, but here's a little nugget for everybody, is up in the URL, if you put a £sign and then a line number, will jump you right to that line. So now, if you want to share a log that opens to a specific line, you can. It's very easy. And all of these filters, I forgot to mention, are applied at the URL level too. So that's true for any filter that you've applied. So now you could copy this and open a new tab, for example, or put it in an email, and it will jump right to that line. All right, so that's all I've got. Brad is up next.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about. The first one is some log filtering options that don't necessarily stand out.
You're on the next slide. There you go.
Here I am. Log filtering or test results filtering options that don't necessarily stand out on the results page here. So you can filter your results by a number of different criteria, by the test package that you're running. So if you want to find results that are all contained within a specific test package or a particular device, or that contain failures and that sort of thing. But you can also search by a particular test case. So if you're like us, anything like us, you've got a number of different test packages that you've created, either through the process of figuring out which tests you want to run, and then you set up some that you're going to run on a regular basis. And after a while, you may discover that you want to find out which test packages contain a particular test that that you're interested in, making sure that it is in the test, in being run over time. So here we go. If we have an example here, this is our results page where you can search for with the normal filtering that you have here. But if you type in a test case name, this will show you all of the test packages and all of the results that contain this test CDRouter scale 15. So now you can, with this result, you can filter this even further by entering the test package name or selecting a particular device, and that will show you all of these test packages that contain this test case. And you can see on the left-hand margin here, this green stripe. This shows that this test passed in each of these test runs. And as you go through, you can easily identify where a particular test failed. That particular test has failed.
Yeah, so green is obviously a pass, red is fail, and then if there's no color there, that means the test just wasn't included or wasn't run. So a reason for that would be if it was skipped at runtime by the user, or if the
exactly, or if the test package ran into an error.
Yeah.
And then where did our other window go? So that's the test filtering your results by a test case name. And I also wanted to talk about the web API. This is something that's been available since CDRouter 10.0 when we redesigned the entire web interface. There's a lot of functionality in the web interface that is completely controllable and automatable using our web API. You can find documentation for this on the support site. There's a lot of stuff that basically anything that you can do with the web interface with your mouse by hand, you can automate in a script. There is an API library that's documented on our site. We've also created a couple of libraries. There's a Python library, which makes it very easy with just a few lines to automate all kinds of things. And we provide some sample scripts to show you examples. You can create new configurations or new test packages. You can export a set of results using filters and export those all at once through a script. You can search through the logs and extract certain messages and find which test results contain certain types of messages, so you can easily identify things that you might be looking for without searching by hand, that you would have to search through by hand in the web interface. You can launch packages with certain criteria, so if you want to automate your test runs every night, you can set up a script to do that, to launch certain types of packages, either by the package name or the contents of the package, etc. There's also a Ruby gem, and both the Python and the Ruby libraries can be used for integration with external tools like Jenkins or Bamboo.
Bamboo, yeah, or even homegrown systems.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that takes programming, launches an external tool, you can create a script or integrate it with that tool to control CDRouter. And then lastly, we've created a workspace for the Insomnia tool, which Insomnia is an application that basically allows you to manually send web requests. So with this workspace, you can select any of the operations that are available in CDRouter's web API and view the results that come back. So this is helpful if you're creating your own tool outside of Python or Ruby, and you want to send the request directly using the API. This allows you to test that out and see the actual results that come back, so that you, through the development of your script, you can know what fields are going to be contained in that response. So here we have, like, this is what a listing of the test results would look like. This is equivalent to what you would see on the web interface. If you click the results page, you would see each of these lines is represented in the response here. And then from there, you can do all sorts of other things. You can look directly into one particular test result. You can look at the packages, the config files, anything.
Yeah, Insomnia is a great tool. I use it personally to visualize how the API actually works, which when you're writing other scripts is very helpful. And we've built it all up for you so that it's very simple. All you need to do is install Insomnia and then download the workspace, and you've got all of the calls and everything right there so that you can start playing around with your system.
Yep. And then, yeah, also this is all available through GitHub. Our Ruby gem is here. We have a number of examples available to you so that you can get yourself started. Same thing with the Python library. We have a number of examples to help get you started and show you some of the things that you could do with that. And the Python library comes with some excellent documentation to explain each of the endpoints and methods that are available and the class structures. Making it very easy for you to get up and running. All right, who do you got next?
I think Joe is here, batting cleanup.
All right, well, good morning and afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to talk about a couple test content things that we did this year. In our 10.5 release, we added a new module for ARP testing. And while you might be thinking that ARP is pretty done and should be well tested already, we decided to investigate this a little bit further. If you think about the evolution of these types of products, whether they're in consumer or business space, the thinking used to be that your WAN side had to be protected and hardened, and things were fairly open on your LAN. But now, really, every interface on your device is a potential attack point. And so it's worth looking into really everything that is touching your device. So if you look at ARP specifically, and you look at what most people are using today, they're probably running a Linux kernel where the ARP functionality is embedded in the kernel. If you go look at what's happening, you'll see that even though the fundamentals of ARP are not changing, the source code is changing. I think I counted like 17 deltas over the past year. So things do change, and there is a need to always examine the ARP behavior. One of the things we put together is a white paper that talks about some of the issues we've seen that look at ARP security and some of the performance issues. And I just want to highlight a few of those sample issues here. We noticed we did add some stress tests for ARP, and we were surprised actually that some of the devices that we tested showed some ARP cache errors. So what an example of this would be, just at some point during the operation of the device, the destination MAC address would change or revert to an older ARP entry. So there's clearly some cache management issues that would surface under some conditions. So you can imagine that the Linux kernel is used in all kinds of devices. It's used in enterprise switches, and it's used in CPE devices, all kinds of environments. And changes and optimizations made for some environments may not be well suited for other environments. And that's really our motivation for having something to at least test the functionality. One of the other things that we've seen previously, and we wanted to expose it in a test case, is that some devices will leak the WAN side addresses onto the LAN. And so you'll see this common CDRouter's had a warning message when it would see ARP traffic on the LAN side where the destination IPs are actually the networks on the WAN side. So if you're able to attach to the LAN of a device, you can learn about the gateway information potentially by just listening to ARP. This comes because the default behavior for some of the Linux kernels and the way ARP works allows you to ARP across interfaces, and this may not be ideal for a hardened router, but we wanted to expose this in a test case. And for some devices, the story is even worse because you can spoof the WAN side gateway addresses on the LAN and cause the device to actually change its routing table. Let's say it's the gateway for the default route. You can point that to something else, to some other address that does not exist, some other MAC address, and this will break forwarding. And we have a test case that demonstrates this. There's a few devices that suffer this problem. So let's say somebody connected to your guest Wi-Fi, and they could then send they could listen to ARP, and then they could send a spoofed gateway address via ARP response. And I have a quick example of what that kind of looks like.
So that's basically creating a DOS type of situation on the device then at that point.
Correct. Yeah, it's driven from the LAN side. So somebody might say, well, I don't worry about what happens on my LAN. But what we see today is that there's so many risks if a PC or some device got infected with some malware and it was doing something like this, it could take down your gateway forwarding. So this is a CloudChart trace of ARP spoofing the WAN gateway, and I'm just going to highlight a couple things where we basically had a test that sent a spoofed WAN ARP response, but we're sending it on the LAN. And if you see all these pings here, they're now going unanswered because we have disabled the ability to forward on that device. Then we restore that entry back to its regular expected resolved address, and forwarding gets restored. So this is a test case. We have it in our ARP module. So if you haven't run through those yet, I would recommend taking a look and seeing what happens. You want to upgrade your config, as Brian mentioned, because we do have some test bars that control the expected ARP implementation. We did add a ARP mode. So we have a few values for that will describe your ARP mode, and that helps map it to the ARP modes that are possible with the Linux kernel. So you can configure your ARP implementation to be very strict and only resolve entries that are on the configured interface on which the request is learned. But by default, it's very open, and it allows your device is potentially going to answer ARP requests for any interface, and that's how you get this leaking across your interfaces. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. That's a interesting example. We also recommend that you combine these ARP tests with other testing that you're doing, because that's really where you're going to find the interesting results. Our ARP stress tests are going to introduce lots of ARP changes, and in a normal CDRouter run, while we do introduce new clients and there are ARP updates, this is going to increase that dramatically. And so if you do have issues with caching or things timing out over time, they're more likely to show up when you turn on these additional stressful ARP tests.
And a great way to verify that too is just by looping your tests. If you build up a test package that has these ARP stress tests and maybe some other tests in it, and then loop that, maybe 100 times or something like that, if there are issues, you'll see those pretty quickly in that type of a test run.
Yeah, that is a great tip. One of the things that I typically do personally when I'm checking out a new router, I'll start with some easy tests like the top 100. I'll introduce a couple stressful things, but then I will put the device in a loop mode and I'll let it run overnight. That separates out devices pretty quickly. The ones that have problematic behaviors usually surface in long duration runs where you're just looping tests. All right, let's go on to the next one here. And I just wanted to quickly mention our DOCSIS add-on. This was a big project that we launched this year for devices that use a cable interface with DOCSIS. And so for those vendors that are making devices or service providers, you could test CDRouter in a DOCSIS environment before, but we just made it a whole lot easier. We're using a lot of smaller CMTSs that allow you to build a dedicated setup for your devices that you're testing. With our new add-on, you can take a bridged CMTS. So the CMTS itself doesn't have to have any provisioning, so it can be really kind of a lower end. And we're going to provide all the provisioning services. So built into the WAN, we have the expected DHCP server. We'll do the TFTP of the configuration file for DOCSIS, time of day server and log server. You don't need anything else. So you can build your cable plant really simply, connect your DUT and connect your CMTS, wrap that all around with a CDRouter NTA 1000, and you have a complete setup there for testing DOCSIS. What's even better is that CDRouter will control the DOCSIS configuration file. So if you're familiar with the whole DOCSIS world, there are literally thousands of parameters that you could have in a configuration file that your cable modem is going to download and boot from. And then, of course, there's all the vendor-specific behavior or parameters that you might have in there as well, and even SNMP OIDs that you're going to have in there. So all of this can go within CDRouter and be dynamically generated. That allows you to test with multiple configuration files. So it's possible to do something where you set the upload and download speeds and then run a performance test in CDRouter and verify they are actually getting those rates or not going above those rates. So it's very powerful. And while we don't have test cases for every single DOCSIS configuration parameter, it really opens up the possibility for all kinds of things. We have modules now in our add-on specifically for the CM interface. So you can run some DHCP tests against the CM interface, and then later, or right next to it, run DHCP tests against the eRouter interfaces. So the add-on specifically knows there are multiple interfaces, one with the CM behavior, another one with the eRouter. So we specifically handle that, make your environment a lot easier. We know in the past some of the cable vendors have pointed CDRouter at the CM interface and done some things that way. And while that works, we specifically make sure we're crafting things appropriately. We're following the DOCSIS standard, make sure we're using the right DHCP options, for example, to bring up the CM. So we've really made it a lot smoother than previously. We also support TR69 provisioning. So DOCSIS does allow you to provision your TR69 ACS through the config file. So when your eRouter boots, it should learn the ACS URL doing this. So we support that, and it lets you build a complete test environment for learning your ACS URL and booting up, and then connecting to the TR69 ACS server that CDRouter runs. So it's a nice environment for verifying all that behavior. And I mentioned earlier testing downstream and upstream bandwidth. Those are just examples of some of the interesting things you can now do. So if you're working with DOCSIS, you haven't checked this out, you might want to take a look at it. You can contact us to learn more specifics about the CMTS that we use and some options for that. But it's definitely a nice environment once you put it together for doing some nice isolated testing. All right, I'm going to jump to, I think this is our last topic here, just talking a little bit about the roadmap for 2018 and some of the things we're working on, just some of the highlights here. One of the things, we have a project underway this year. We work quite a bit with broadband forum standards and looking at the next generation for managing devices called USP. If you haven't seen this before, you may want to go to usp.technology. This is an information page put out by the Broadband Forum. Describes the protocol, some of the goals, and how to get started with it. So we've been working on an implementation of this. This is sort of the next generation beyond TR69. One of the really good things about it is a lot of the work that has gone into the broadband forum over the last decade is really in the data model that's been developed to describe functionality and services. So the data model that's moving forward with USP is the device 2 data model. So that's really fantastic for anybody supporting device 2. But what we're looking at is USP as a way of interacting with your device that will solve some architectural challenges in a new way. And so we're going to be supporting that and looking forward to working with the vendor community on that as it evolves. And we'll be talking more about that this year. We're also launching a new IR181 module. That's another broadband forum standard that specifically talks about functional test cases for the data model. So going through the different major areas of the data model, configuring very specific things. So we've implemented these tests as well, and we're hoping to roll that out this year. It's very useful. While CDRouter has tests that exercise different parts of the protocol and different parts of the data model, this is a much more comprehensive pass at the data model for realistic services that you would implement on a gateway. So we're looking forward to getting that out. We're also working on NTA 1000 hardware updates. We've been shipping the NTA product for many years now. Most of our customers are running on this. We now have a lot of features committed to the NTA that are specific, hardware specific. Those have to do with things like wireless, some of the wireless functionality that we can do in a known hardware environment, like virtualization. Performance also requires an NTA. So we continue to update this. We're on generation 5 right now and working on the 6th generation. That will help us continue to improve performance and Wi-Fi. We just see a lot of interest in Wi-Fi. Undoubtedly, that's an exciting area. Lots of updates are constantly happening. So we're trying to keep up with our ability to address that as well. And we're really looking at what has to happen within CDRouter to help support some of the next generation topologies. If you're looking at NFV or any kind of software-defined functionality, there's some things we're working on that will help better support these environments. We're seeing all kinds of architectures that people want to do. So we're trying to make sure CDRouter can adapt to all of those types of things as well. We're always interested in learning more about customers' roadmaps. That's our best source for new development. A lot of our additional one-off test cases or features for configuration, or even things about usability and test management, all of that feedback is excellent. And so we use that heavily to influence things we can do. Sometimes we do identify features that are maybe easier for us to implement and add, and we'll go ahead and do that. So that's a kind of a look ahead at our roadmap for 2018. I hope you've enjoyed all of these tips and tricks. There's a lot in CDRouter. If you're using CDRouter 10.5, there's a lot of functionality in there, and we're always willing to help you understand what you have, what features are available for you.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We really enjoy kind of doing these omnibus speed sessions with our whole support team at the end of the year to make sure that there's nothing that people might have missed over the course of all the releases we've done, or to just go through and make sure that people aren't missing any of the vast amounts of functionality that are in CDRouter that allows you to make your test automation faster and let you get more done. So again, if you have any further questions, you can always feel free to email us at support@qacafe.com. And we're also on our website, you can find, if you go to our training page, you can find all of our previous webinars by looking at the webinar category. And there's a lot of great stuff there. There were also some other blog articles and support articles that we mentioned during the webinar. And you can find them if you go to support.qacafe.com and you do a search or if you search on www.qacafe.com, it'll search both of those, and you can probably find what you're looking for there. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your year, and we will look forward to seeing you on future webinars in 2018. Enjoy your day.
All right, thank you.